character generator. I am Greg Tito, and I have Brandy Camel. Hi, Brandy.
Hey, Greg, how you doing?
Very excited to roll up a random character using D&D Beyond in this segment, and then you and I get to have fun making up a character based on whatever numbers and choices spit out. Always fun.
Yeah, this is the best. This is so much fun. It's just a great creative exercise. So
Yeah, and I'm hoping folks, take a listen to this, get inspired, and perhaps even if you like the character, you can use it as an NPC in your game or as a PC if that's something that you're looking for. And we make the links available in the show notes as well as on social. So check that out if you're interested. And without further ado, as I'd like to just say that phrase because that's what all professional folks do. I'm going to create a random character right here in front of y'all, and we can see what we get. All right, so...
What do we get?
Oh, let's view that character sheet. That's a funny name already.
Oh, I didn't see it. Oh, wow. Okay.
Quozivernacle.
Quozivernacle.
Arachno monk.
Ooh.
Very interesting. It's a monk with a -2 dexterity modifier.
And a -2 wisdom.
-2 wisdom. Decent strength with a 14, con, and int of 12. And middle of the road charisma is pretty good.
All right.
Interesting. Taking a look at some of the other stuff.
This is definitely going to be interesting to work with. I feel like already this is probably like a very old monk, right? Has been around a while. Maybe that's why he's a little bit slower.
That could work. I like that already. We don't get to dramatize, aging characters as much. I think for better or worse, a lot of people go onto the trope of the hero's journey and like to take a young character and level them up over time. But it's really fascinating to do an older character. That's a great idea.
All right. Okay, we'll go with that.
We've got a -2 to initiative because of that dexterity modifier with his, which is always challenging, I guess I'll say. Trained in acrobatics, so had some, maybe in their youth, were able to do some tumbling with some, proficiency, but not as much right now.
Mm-hmm.
Knows their history with a trained history, so that's their highest skill roll right here is a +3.
Yep. So definitely, maybe this is the kind of monk that studies a lot, right? Like this is your scholarly type of monk.
That makes sense. Maybe like a teacher or a mentor. Trained in insight, but that also just makes it back to a 0. And persuasion. So with the 0 charisma bonus, they've got a bit of an advantage there, being able to get people to do what they want to do, but not, for a 3rd level character, there's nothing outstanding in the skills category.
Yeah, this really forces to me the idea of like a scholar or an orator, This is somebody who's got good persuasion skills, can present to a class, can tell when their students are passing notes.
That makes sense. Quozivernacle is a very gender neutral name, at least to my view there. So what gender would you put them at?
Quozivernacle. Yeah, I mean, Quoziver is a very interesting name. I agree with you that it's pretty gender neutral. What would the nickname of this character be? Like if somebody was going to give him a nickname, what would you call them?
Quicksilver.
Quicksilver.
Maybe that's a joke on their -2 dexterity. They are fast though for a gnome, especially. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a monk feature, but having a 35 speed is pretty good.
I kind of like the idea that maybe this is somebody who speed isn't they're physically moving fast so much as that they're really good at finding the fastest way between 2 points. Especially with that higher intelligence. It's like, maybe cut corners in the courtyard to get where they need to go a little faster.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I like that. It's almost like a a beautiful mind type of, or Sherlock calculation that happens in order for them to get to point A to point B as quickly as they can.
Yeah.
Here's something interesting. Their background is Waterdavian noble.
Interesting.
So that means, they've got, it's basically like just a focused version of the noble background. So that means they have lived in relative, opulence in the city of Waterdeep, which we often refer to as the New York City of the Sword Coast, a metropolitan city. So having a rock gnome is not necessarily outside a possibility in Waterdeep.
Yeah. They could fit right in. This is a rock gnome that maybe comes from a little bit of money, comes from a higher station.
Here's the question. Do you think they would be a old bodyguard or body servant to a noble house in Waterdeep, or do you think they are the matriarch or patriarch themselves?
That's a great question. I mean, with that 14 strength, that's a pretty burly strength. That could be, oh, you know what? They could actually fit in really well as like the steward of a household, where they're not the owner of the household, but they've kind of worked their way up through maybe some bodyguarding tactics and became that trusted, second-hand man that keeps track of a household.
I like that. So kind of like a major domo of a Waterdavian house. Looking at the monastic tradition, it's a way of mercy.
Okay.
Which I believe way of open hand. Trying to open up more details on that. Why don't you talk while I do that?
Let's see. So the way of mercy, that's interesting. So this is kind of they're wandering physicians to the poor and to the hurt. That's interesting. Is this somebody who decided to retire from this life? Or maybe they just kind of exercise these skills within the city of Waterdeep, or within even just the household that they watch over.
Yeah, so they do have, the Hand of Healing feature, which gives a mystical touch that can mend wounds.
Okay.
By spending key points. So it's basically like a was it Mistweaver? Is that the subclass in World of Warcraft? Yeah, it's got that kind of monk tradition going on here.
Yep.
Yeah, but I like that they were retired from that tradition. Like that's what they used to do. They used to wander as a way of mercy. It looks like some of the detail of that background says that they wore cowls and cloaks and were in many ways the bringers of the end of someone's life as well as healers. So part of me wants to think like that they performed some service for a Waterdeep noble and was offered a permanent residence as steward in so doing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I'm digging that. I'm digging that for sure. That maybe this was a serendipitous encounter that happened way back when, and it's just kind of paved the way for this character's retirement. I'm definitely kind of starting to lean male on this. I kind of like the idea of like a little elderly man rock gnome who's made this was his life's journey, and this is where he's arrived at.
Yeah, I like that too. All right, so Quozivernacle is the male major domo of a Waterdeep house. They've got a lot of tool proficiencies here with leather workers' tools, tinker's tools, poisoners, and herbalism kit. I think that comes from the Way of Mercy. They also know how to play Three Dragon Ante.
Yeah, that comes from the Waterdavian noble. Definitely a favorite pastime.
I have, maybe just because I've been watching Star Trek Next Generation and looking forward to the poker scenes, but I like that perhaps that is a place where servants and nobles come together
Hmm.
and play a game, on a weekly basis, almost like a ritual
Yeah.
to gamble together.
Hmm. And maybe it's the kind of thing that like the higher up nobles, they do under the cover of darkness so that they're not seen commiserating with the rabble.
Right? Yeah, I think that's really cool.
Yep.
And that would go into having insight trained, even though they might not be good at it. So maybe they lose money more often than not, or loses money more often than not.
Yeah, yeah. I can
That's
definitely
cool.
see that. So the
Looking
thing
at,
that's really interesting here for me is I can't get over this six wisdom monk because like this is a monk who's not great at the monkly duties. So or a lot of the skills that being a monk gives you. Um, so what do you think is the way to kind of navigate around that? Is it that maybe they had an experience early in their life that resulted in a dropped wisdom, or do you think it's more of a no? This is somebody who's just kind of persuaded their way through.
that is an interesting kind of conundrum, right? Because usually if we're talking about an older character, they gain wisdom over
Typically, yeah.
time, right? And
Mhm.
perhaps there is an anger within them, and that's the first thing that kind of comes to mind. Like there's a temper in
Mhm.
Quo-Zibber that actively works against situations in which a connection to the divine or that kind of street smarts um,
Yeah, so
isn't
he's a
isn't
little hot-headed. He kind of jumps to action, which is a little, on the opposite end of what you would expect from a monk. But
Yeah. And maybe, I don't know if this is intelligence or wisdom, but maybe they don't admit or believe that their monkly abilities are curtailed at all. Like they refuse to
could be.
believe that they are, um, less capable than they used to be.
Hmm.
And that
Yeah,
gets them
no,
into trouble.
just that kind of stubbornness. Like, oh no, I was great back in my day. Like this is definitely a back in my day character. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, totally. I'm thinking of that like kind of older athlete that refuses to believe that they are, not as capable
Past their
as he used to be.
prime.
Yeah,
But clearly he's got like a good solid exercise regimen and is keeping up that strength. Like this is one of those ripped elder gentlemen.
yep. And he's got the strength so that he can still pop you one.
Hmm.
Maybe not be as quick at it or do it at the right times, but if that punch lands, it's gonna hurt.
It's gonna hurt. Yeah.
And it is a big if with the +4 to unarmed strength. That's funny. Okay. What? How do you think they would have, or he would have started along the path of being a way of mercy, especially being a rock gnome, which typically comes from the Underdark?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that there's that might be a kind of a fun twist, especially as a rock gnome that came from the Underdark. There's a lot of really poisonous stuff in the
Mm,
Underdark. So maybe that was his kind of his initial goal was to really master that side of being in the Underdark and being able to deal with those things and help other people with those things.
that makes sense. And then was somehow exiled to the surface, or chose to go to the surface.
I mean, I could really see it either way. I could see it maybe there was a young Waterdavian noble who went adventuring in the Underdark, and Quoziver
Oh.
was the one who saved him from a nasty encounter with like a spider or some poisonous spores or something.
Oh, I like that. Maybe even through the Out of the Abyss scenario
Yeah.
from a few years back, that the Waterdavian noble went into the Underdark to fight the demonic hordes that were coming up, and met
Mhm.
Quoziver then, and then asked him to return to Waterdeep and serve his house, and
Yeah. I could
so
see
far so
that. Yeah.
good.
That seems like a really good hook in for Quoziver.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Okay, what we got a little bit of an image in my mind about what Quoziver looks like with you said the buff older man.
Yeah.
Do you think he accentuates that by wearing open shirts very often?
I think if he doesn't wear open shirts, he definitely wears like tighter fitting ones, right?
Yeah.
Like just I imagine him in like a very trim vest, something that's like classy but tight.
Where you can totally tell that he's got big shoulders and guns underneath.
Yeah, for sure.
That makes sense. Maybe this is wrong, but I have the maybe it's the low wisdom that he pulls that shirt off and that vest off very often.
Yes, absolutely. No, he just owns it. Whether or not it's, he's not necessarily, he's got the train and insight, but it's not very good. So maybe he's not reading the room, but he owns it anyway. That's his.
No, I want him to go like all Hulk Hogan and throw down as quickly as possible. Maybe when being bluffed in Three Dragon Ante.
I could see him flipping that table, which like for him is more of like an above the head movement, right?
he's benching the table. Oh, that's awesome. What about his coloring and facial look? What would you think he looks like?
So we've talked about him being older. Do we think that he is like well past his prime and like shock white hair, or do we think that he's more like salt and pepper, or where do we think he's at in the age cycle?
I think salt and pepper, probably more salt and pepper, honestly.
Okay.
And that, rock gnomes, I think, have lighter coloring anyway. So, his skin has, kind of, or maybe, I don't know, they might have sensitivity to sun or whatnot. So maybe he wears like a wide brim hat or something that, would keep some shade
out of the way.
Yeah. Or maybe that's the cowl thing. Maybe he wears hooded cloaks or something like that.
I love the idea of this like tightly trimmed vest with a cowl.
Yeah.
That visual is fantastic. It's very CW's The Arrow.
Right? It's like, we're going to hide, but make sure you see those abs.
Right.
All right, that's cool. All right, what is the final question here? What does Quoziver sound like? What kind of voice would you give him if you were dramatizing him in a D&D game?
Oh, man. I mean, he's still got to have that kind of higher pitched gnomish voice from being a smaller character, but he needs to also have grit to it, right? Like, there's I got there a little bit earlier where it's like, back in my day, we did things this way.
I like that. Oh my God, that's so good. Yeah, I love that mashup of high-pitched gnome with grizzled, cowboy kind of feel. It's hard to pull off, but if you can, I think you'll nail what Quoziver sounds like.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. Okay, I think we've got a solidly built character here in terms of like personality and where he's come from, background.
Yeah. All right, so let me give it the summary here. So Quoziver Knackle is a rock gnome monk with not great agility or decision-making skills, but he followed the way of mercy when he was in the Underdark and helped people, his own people, as well as visitors to the Underdark if they were injured or encountered poison mushrooms. And in doing so, he assisted a noble from the city of Waterdeep, perhaps during the campaign against the demon hordes in Out of the Abyss. And due to that service, was asked to follow the Waterdeep noble. We haven't given the house out, but we'll let people, figure out what house they might want that to be, depending on whatever story they want to do. To come to the surface and be a trusted servant, and over time on the surface became more involved in being a steward and perhaps teacher, and integrated himself in the kind of Waterdeep society there, perhaps by playing Three Dragon Ante with several of the nobles and maybe some of the, I'm thinking like an upstairs, downstairs type thing with some of the major servants of the house participating in these kind of ritualistic games. He's on the older side, definitely graying, keeps up with a training regiment though, so he's well muscled, and he wears a cowl when he's outside to protect his skin from the sun. But when he does take it down, he's got mostly graying hair and a lighter pallor to his skin, and always figures out a way to rip off his shirt at some imagined slight that is done either through the gaming or by making fun of his, lack of manual dexterity, because he drops things. I just made that part
definitely.
up. I don't know if it's true.
Definitely.
And he's got a nice blended voice that has high pitched notes, but also a grizzled type of way to it.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Does that all make sense, Brandy?
Oh yeah, that makes tons of sense. I love this guy. I think he's great.
Quozivernacle, very interesting character, fun to put together. Thanks so much for going along this journey with us, and thank you, Brandy, for all those ideas. So fun.
Of course, this is always a blast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we will, again, make this character available through a link, and I'd love to hear any stories about Quoziver being used in your games or what other fun random characters you come up with. So thanks, everyone, and that's Random Character Generator.